Trustee Rowland and Trustee Nickel, just letting you know that we're live, and if you speak right now on your phone, you'll be broadcast globally to the hundreds and hundreds of people that are watching. Okay, so good evening. Welcome to the Sunrise School Division Board of Trustees regular meeting on September 21st, 2021. So in attendance this evening in the meeting here is myself. We have Trustee Inslee, Trustee Barry, Trustee Duma, Trustee Reed, Trustee Harris. We have our Assistant Superintendent, Jackie Julian. We have our Secretary Treasurer, Scott Carlton. We have our Superintendent, Kathy Timko, and we have our Secretary to the Board and to our Secretary Treasurer, Stacy Bonato. We also have a guest this evening. Sorry? Oh, yes, sorry. Jesus. We have two trustees on the phone as well. My apologies. We have Trustee Nickel and Trustee Rowan who have called in. They're not present at the meeting, but they are on the call with us this evening. And we also have Tracy Weidman from our purchasing department with us this evening as well. So we'll call the meeting to order at 7:07 p.m. and we're going to start with O Canada from Gillis School. Thank you to Gillis School for O Canada. Next would be 1.3, our treaty acknowledgement, and we'll move to Trustee Harris.
We acknowledge the traditional land upon which Sunrise School Division resides as Treaty 1 territory. We honor our partnership with Canada's original peoples and respect the gifts of Indigenous history, culture, and language. We commit to moving forward in partnership with our communities in a spirit of collaboration and reconciliation.
Thank you, Trustee Harris. Moving to 2.1, which is the adoption of the agenda. Be it resolved that the Board approve the agenda. Do I have a mover? Trustee Barry moves. Do I have a seconder? Trustee Harris seconds. Questions? Okay, so we'll call the vote. All right, so it passed, 8 in favor and 1 absent. Next is Chairman's comments, and I will make the comment that I forgot to earlier on. We do have one trustee who's absent. It's our Chair, Trustee Magnon. So you'll have to bear with me this evening as I navigate through our meeting this evening. And just a reminder to send all questions for this evening's meetings. If there's public watching, you can send your questions to scarleton, so it's SCARLETON @sunrisesd.ca. You will have to submit your question along with your name and civic address of the sender, and you must include that in your email along with your question. Also, just a reminder to trustees in the room or anybody speaking in the room, if you could just please use your microphone when you're speaking so that our viewers and our trustees on the line can hear you. And we'll move on to 3.2, which is share a story. Are there any trustees wanting to share a story? Okay, so hearing none, we'll move on to 4.0, which is our board delegation in school division educational showcasing. 4.1 is our operational presentation by our purchasing department, Tracy Weidman, who's our purchasing manager. So again, Tracy, welcome to our meeting this evening. The board is excited to have you here and looking forward to your presentation. Scott, did you want to add anything, or?
Yeah, I'll do a brief introduction while I told Tracy I would also behave as her assistant here, so I'm going to get the presentation up. Tracy's been with the division for a few years now. I won't date you, Tracy, but in various different positions across the division, and most recently, I don't want to steal your thunder, but taking on the role as our purchasing manager. You know, when you're a division the size we are, we have a $70 million budget, certainly we have a need to procure a lot of different things, and it certainly benefits us having somebody who takes responsibility for sourcing vendors and finding the best price that we possibly can, and in addition to that, sort of acting as that liaison to our principals and secretaries and people at the school level who are responsible for purchasing, so you know they know how to fit things into their budget, and who we have on our list as vendors and where we get the best price and the best quality material. So, you know, certainly that's the bulk of what Tracy does, and again, she'll tell you a little bit more about that now.
I'm not sure about that, Scott. You kind of, okay, the first slide is, you already did it, so that's fine. So the main responsibilities of purchasing, the procurement process starts with identifying and acquiring a need from an external source, which could be through quotes or competitive bidding, tendering process. Procurement also, involves managing any contract resulting from acquiring the need and dealing with any contractual issues with the awarded supplier. Purchasing department is a customer service resource to school and sites by sourcing competitive pricing from tenders and quotes. Sourcing can include current suppliers, current tenders, as well as the federal CCPI, which is the Canadian Collaborative Procurement Initiative, and being a member of the Metro Purchasing Group. Purchasing assists school admin to work within their budgets and assisting them with dollar spends in appropriate program or line areas. Another responsibility is to ensure adherence to Sunrise policies and procedures, as well as following provincial and federal regulations to pass an audit as required by Manitoba Education. Adherence ensures fairness and consistency throughout the division and accountability to the taxpayer. Examples will be acceptance of sealed bids for tenders or quotes, bid opening with at least 2 people present in the room, no fax or email bids are accepted. This ensures all who wish to do business with Sunrise can be confident of a fair and competitive process. There are a number of functions listed for the purchasing department, both daily and project type and scope. Budget manager inquiry, which is also referred to as BMI, is a feature in Power School where principals, secretaries, and managers can view all their accounts with live data, which includes their budgets and expenditures. This is an excellent tool for admin for planning and budgeting throughout the school year as the data is current. The contract management piece is ensuring awarded suppliers are following contract terms for pricing as well as specific and general conditions. Should an issue arise, the supplier is contacted to remind them of the terms of the contract. Vendor sourcing is constant and local suppliers are encouraged to be sourced first. Local suppliers can be within the local community, within the province of Manitoba, or within Canada, depending on the good or service being sourced. Purchasing has established some in-house charge accounts within school communities. They include the local co-ops and grocery stores and local lumber yards such as McMunn and Yates. This slide just represents the life of a requisition to a purchase order. Requisitions are treated similar to a work order. It is entered by a school, reviewed by purchasing for pricing and coding, and flows through routing depending on dollar value and account being expensed. Once a purchase order is generated from the initial requisition, it is sent to the vendor for fulfillment. The past year had many unique circumstances posed to everyone. Although at times it did feel like everything we did revolved around COVID, some of the items listed in the slide are in fact separate and apart from anything COVID. The printer assessment is an ongoing living document. As needs arise, an informed decision is made based on the assessment and current printer and copier fleet, as well as reason for the purchase. Purchasing area in Teams was finalized this past year as a resource for users for everything purchasing. It contains everything from procedures to current pricing to a chat feature where staff can ask general questions for all users to view. Just prior to the start of the school year in August 2020, purchasing repurposed all the furniture in the old and Oak Bank bus garages to schools to assist in accommodating COVID physical distancing and outdoor classrooms. Amazon Business complements our other online shopping platforms for staff such as Christie's, Staples, Business Advantage, and Supreme. Purchasing established an invoicing feature for Amazon where the division does not have to pay by divisional credit card. Instead, once the PO number is entered in the shopping cart and approved, an invoice is generated. School credit cards were established for Edwardshire and Springfield Collegiate. Process is now running smoothly with not as many transactions as initially thought, largely due to the Amazon invoicing. Our school dashboards are live for vendor listings and outstanding open POs. The outstanding open PO report is a resource for schools to follow up on any outstanding orders they may have not received from the supplier or who have not been invoiced. The closure of Manitoba Learning Resource Centre presented some challenges as very little info was provided by the province with very short notice. Purchasing managed to source alternative suppliers for curricular materials and CUME files. School supplies. On June 1st, the board approved a motion for the divisional classroom supply purchase. A list of common items was gathered from school supply lists previously provided to students from their school. The common items were forwarded to suppliers to provide best pricing. Once it was determined that Christie's was the awarded supplier, the pricing was uploaded into the spreadsheet and distributed to schools for their completion by classroom. Formulas were incorporated into the spreadsheet to provide admin with financial figures by classroom and overall spend, as well as costs per student. The request was to have the information back to purchasing by June 30th to allow for ordering and processing of POs prior to school summer break. Deliveries started to arrive at the Education Centre at the beginning of July through to the end of August. Most supplies were delivered and labeled by classroom, with the bulk items being individually packaged by the Supply Palooza team. Deliveries from Education Centre to schools started the last 2 weeks of August and involved sorting and organizing at the school site by classroom. The goal was to have teachers easily pick up all their supplies for their classroom when they returned to school. There was a significant amount of behind-the-scenes work to reconcile the spreadsheets with packing slips and invoices to ensure we were receiving the product ordered and to keep track of back-ordered items per classroom. The project did not come without its challenges. Turnaround was approximately 3 weeks from obtaining best pricing to finalizing orders with schools to providing POs to suppliers. Since this was a new practice, we didn't have accurate volumes to provide to suppliers to base their pricing. Orders are still being placed by schools for items we did not have on the initial spreadsheet distributed in June. Initially, there was a bit of resistance to the standardization as some staff wanted to purchase their own supplies or had preferences to certain brands. This is a natural reaction when implementing change to past practices. In the end, the feedback was positive overall due to the time and cost savings. Global shortages, wildfires, and back-ordered items were challenges but out of the control of Sunrise. Realized efficiencies from a central buy did not all relate to costs. For the parents, they did not have to fly or shop and run from store to store to buy specific supplies on a list with little or no discount. All supplies being delivered and sorted by teacher at each site meant the supplies were waiting at the school for teachers to arrive, and then they only needed to pick up their supplies from the designated area in each school and provide directly to students. A centralized buy realized cost savings. The cost per item discount did vary. A larger ticket item, for example, a 3-inch binder, would have a deeper discount than a 99-cent box of pencils. The end result was not only zero cost to parents, but savings to the school. If the school did not spend the $50 per student allocation, they could supplement the purchase of items required that were not on the spreadsheet. Some examples were student courier bags and Kleenex for elementary students. These items were not common to all of the Sunrise schools, but perhaps a couple elementary schools. As the project rolled out, some improvements quickly surfaced that would make the process more efficient in future. A survey will be distributed to the school admin and secretaries for feedback on the overall process, common items ordered, and suggestions for improvements. Regarding the approximate quantities to be ordered for each item, we now have a baseline which should result in a more aggressive pricing from the supplier. Pricing is one factor to be considered when awarding a supplier for this project. However, the overall process for packaging and delivery needs to be considered as well. The perfect end result should be best pricing with the most efficient delivery and timeline processes. The spreadsheet needs to be distributed sooner to school admin and teaching staff. Teachers were overwhelmed with the new process of ordering of supplies in addition to the end of the year tasks they needed to complete in June. Due to time constraints, the POs were generated by school. Providing POs by classroom would be a much more efficient process for the supplier and the division. Suppliers can plan more efficiently for the large Sunrise orders, and POs can be closed much quicker to accurately reflect financial data in September. No sorting will need to occur at the education center with delivery to schools if the POs are generated by the classroom. An efficient packaging and delivery process from the awarded supplier will also need to be guaranteed to ship direct. Just put it down. Sorry. I can't thank everyone enough who volunteered their time to help, whether it was sorting and packing supplies at the education center, delivering supplies, reconciling paperwork, attending at schools to sort by classroom. It could have not happened without a team effort. Too many to mention, but thank you, thank you, thank you. Christie's had a very efficient packaging and delivery process. For the first time being rolled out in Sunrise, it was virtually seamless with all the project goals being met and minimal oh no moments. In closing, the feedback from schools has been largely positive and appreciative. I would definitely recommend moving forward with this project in the future as a divisional or school-based budget initiative. Any questions? No, I'm good.
Okay, so thank you very much, Tracy, for your presentation. I know I've noted before at this table, but I was able to I unintentionally came in to the education center when all the supplies was in the gymnasium there, and there was a lot of stuff. So I'm sure our motion initially probably had some people like yourself a little worried and concerned, especially with the current climate of COVID, where we know that supplies are limited and that. So we really appreciate what you guys were able to do over that short time, and we'll move to questions if there's any questions from any of the trustees. Maybe I'll go to the phone first, because I've been pretty unfair to them this evening thus far. So, Trustee Rowland or Trustee Nickel, do you guys have any questions for Tracy?
Trustee Rowland here. I don't have any questions, but I just want to commend you on doing an amazing job. And I also want just to make the comment that I have actually reviewed my daughter's school supplies that she received at Springfield Collegiate. and they were very good quality, and we're very pleased with that. So very well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Rowland. Trustee Nicol?
I have no questions.
Thank you, Trustee Nicol. Trustee Barry, you had a question?
Yes, thanks for the presentation, very informative. I guess the one question I got is, you talked about BC wildfires, so is Christie's from BC? Is it a BC company? Just clarification.
Yeah, depending on where their manufacturer is, they aren't located. Christie's is located in Brandon, and they have a warehouse in Winnipeg. But depending on where they're getting the product shipped from with the manufacturers, there was a turnaround in BC that was a delay at some point for some products.
Thank you, Trustee Barry. Trustee Duma, go ahead.
Thank you, Tracy. You make mention that the MLRC, could you just say what that initials stand for? And I think you mentioned that they're no longer being a distribution hub, so just could you talk about that for a bit?
Yeah, the MLRC is Manitoba Learning Resource Center. It was kind of a department of the provincial government that we received a textbook grant from. So we initially, until the grant was used up, we had to order all our curricular supplies from there instead of ordering from suppliers direct. So I think it was in about February, correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah. We got notice that they were closing, but there wasn't much direction as to where we were supposed to source the curricular materials now that they were closing, or what was going to happen with orders that hadn't been shipped and those kind of things. So that was a bit of a challenge because we were just used to ordering direct from there. So when they decided to close, we had to just source direct from vendors.
Thank you. Was there any other further questions? Oh, Trustee Duma.
I don't have a question, but I wonder if the chair could just, because there's a discussion about this classroom supplies, if you could just reiterate so the public would know that this was a one-time thing. Maybe you talk about it at our budget, but right now it was just for this year to see how it would go, and it was put into the budget for only 1 year. If you could just kind of clarify that.
Sure, thanks, Trustee Duma. Absolutely. So I think anybody listening would have just heard what you said, but yeah, the initiative for school supplies being purchased for all of our students throughout the division at this point in time absolutely was a 1 year, intention to be 1 year only, just to kind of help out our families through COVID and through the different challenges that people are facing in their households right now. So yeah, that was a 1 year intention, and thanks for clarifying, Trustee Duma. It definitely can be a discussion going forward, absolutely, something we can discuss. But it was intended for this year. So I do have a question myself. So you talked about the school credit cards, and I know that was something, also a new initiative, and we're only currently trying it out at 2 of our bigger schools, is that correct? So I guess you mentioned it was going well. Is that something that we would maybe be looking to have the other schools utilize as well, or?
Yeah, with COVID last year, we just decided to just stay the course with ESS and SCI. I think it is something that the other schools would benefit from. The volume of purchases was not as significant as we thought it was going to be, and that's simply because Amazon, we moved towards invoicing with Amazon instead of payment by credit card. So, otherwise it's been going really well. I wouldn't mind rolling it out to the other schools because there is still benefit for they're purchasing sometimes online ebooks or online subscriptions and things like that, so they can pay directly by credit card instead of using the divisional credit card.
Yeah, go ahead. Secretary Treasurer Carlton.
Just to add quickly a comment, Stacey actually today just reminded me that it's on the agenda that I was to provide an update on that for the next meeting. So yeah, it was a bit of a different year. I mean, not only we got billing with Amazon, it still would be useful, but the other thing that we didn't have obviously last year was any PD travel. So, and we used the credit card a lot for PD travel. So it was a bit of a weird year to assess, but certainly Tracy and I will put together a report to come back for next meeting.
Thank you. We're hearing none, no other questions. Again, thank you for coming. We really appreciate your time. You're more than welcome to stay for the rest of our meeting, but we were talking earlier about how beautiful it is outside, so I won't blame you if you leave either. So thank you very much, Tracy. Okay, so we'll continue moving on in our meeting. We'll move to 5.1, which is a Adoption of the minutes from September 7th, 2021 in our inaugural meeting. There is a motion, and it's be it resolved that the board adopt the September 7th, 2021 inaugural board meeting minutes. Do I have a mover? Trustee Harris moves. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Trustee Nichols seconds. Are there any questions? Trustee Duma?
My question is around the public agenda item with the statement underneath, which is on the public domain, so people can see that that's written. So I have some concerns about the statement, trustees' due diligence, all minute corrections are to be done ahead of the meeting. So I hope that people don't think that's what we're doing, because according to Robert's rules and proper minutes, you don't do that. I think the board had discussions about minutes, small corrections for something like a capital T, or, you know, if you forgot to put someone's name in there. But the minutes are actually owned by the secretary. They are not owned by the board at all until they come formally to the board as a draft. And they have to come to us as a draft. In the process of that draft, we move it forward to make any corrections or amendments to the minutes, and we make them publicly. So to assume that there's minutes that are corrected secretly in emails or behind the scenes, I want the public to know that that's not the proper process and we should not be doing it. And this is the first time that I've seen this written in our agenda. So I'd just like to have that clear, that that's not something that should be done. It's completely inappropriate. So just making that statement. So in terms of the minutes, in terms of my vote, the other question I have about the minutes is just the process of the inaugural meeting and the voting. There is something else that happened at that meeting that I think we need to talk about, and that is that we, without a motion, without a policy, without a bylaw change, we changed the way we did our voting. We had 7 trustees that were public and present, or I think, or 6, and 3 trustees that were on the phone. And in the course of our voting, we had a vote that was no longer allowed to be secret. And when you vote, there were 6 trustees that were allowed to have secret ballots, and there were 3 trustees that were not allowed to have secret ballots. And that is a concern. So I think that the board might want to look at that meeting. I think that there was some inappropriate actions that were taken there, because you cannot change your bylaw, your voting process, and take away from your secret ballot without a formal motion about that. So in terms of these minutes, does it reflect what happened? Yes. Does it reflect everything? No. And I would be voting against the minutes, because I believe there's things missing in these minutes that need to be put into them. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Duma. Are there any other questions? Trustee Berry?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I would also agree that there's really no need for this additional comment here of the minutes are to be done ahead of time. Like in my practice, sitting on many boards, it's quite common to review the minutes as revised, and you approve it, and it's done. Like minor changes, if the board agrees to, say, a date change or a name change, that can be done at the board meeting. So I don't think this wording at the heading is really necessary.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Berry. So just a reminder to the board that we had put together an ad hoc committee to come up with a new policy or new procedure for minutes, because the board wasn't satisfied with the process. And so I'm not sure if the chair of that committee wants to speak to what happened with those, what happened with that, and the recommendations that came from there or not. No comment? Okay.
If the chair doesn't want to mention, I'll mention about
Sure.
what that comment meant, and that's what Trustee Duma had alluded to, that if there's spelling mistakes or small mistakes and everything else, that should be brought forward before it comes to the public, because then you have to, if I'm going to start changing and tell you that, well, this one should have a capital, this one should have a comma and all that stuff, that takes a lot of time in our meetings. So those ones, if you notice as you read the minutes, it's just common decency to talk to the secretary and ask the secretary to change that. And of course, that will be changed easily because that doesn't affect what happened at the meeting. If you're asked to change something that happened in the meeting, that's a different story. That's what the chair, that's what the board has to agree with. But small changes should probably be, it will make things a lot easier and less time if small changes were noted to the Secretary Treasurer ahead of time.
Thank you, Trustee Nicol. Yeah, I guess I was just wondering if the recommendations had actually gone to, if they were passed by the board and they went to our secretary. I can't remember. Okay. Any other questions on 5.1? Okay, so we'll call the question on 5.1. I'll just reread the motion. It's be it resolved that the board adopt the September 7th, 2020 inaugural board minutes. So, motion is not carried, is that? So the minutes will have, motion was not carried, it's 4 in favor, 4 opposed, and 1 absent. So we'll have to table those minutes, correct? For the next meeting. And just a reminder that if there's any additions or amendments to those minutes, to make them, I mean, if they're editorial, make them before, but if there's any additions, they'll have to be brought up at the meeting, I guess. Moving on to 5.2 for the September 7th, 2020 regular meeting minutes. Be it resolved that the board adopt the September 7th, 2021 regular board meeting minutes. Do I have a mover? Trustee Harris moves. Trustee Nicol seconds. Questions? Trustee Duma?
Just in addressing the September 7th minutes, I would repeat my concerns as I raised for the prior minutes also, and the statement in the agenda. Thanks. And I will be voting against them.
Thank you, Trustee Duma. Any other questions? Okay, so hearing none, we'll call the question. So again, there's 4 in favor, 4 opposed, and 1 absent, so the motion is not carried. And will be tabled for our next meeting. Okay, so we'll move on to 6.1, which is our superintendent's report. Kathy.
Thank you, Jared. I will try to share this up here, and there's a couple of pieces that I do want to go through. I believe we've said at previous meetings that the information we give is only as current as the print date. So the first bullet on here is, again, proof in the pudding. Between the beginning of the school year and Friday the 17th, which is when my report gets uploaded to here for the trustees, we had logged 1 additional positive case at a call Powerview school. There is a second case that was logged over the weekend at Springfield Middle School. So just to update that, again, that will come in the next board meeting report. Wanted to share with the board as well and with our public that last year throughout the pandemic, any of our students in grade 1 through grade 8 that were immunocompromised, we did a combination of remote teaching here in our own division. Some, our French immersion students, worked with the Manitoba Remote Learning Center because they were physically unable to attend classes in person. So this year we have 6 students in kindergarten through grade 8 that are being provided education by the Manitoba Remote Learning Support Center, and that's an initiative by Manitoba Education. We do not have any students in grade 9 through 12 who need to participate in remote learning either through InformNet or teacher media adoption because of any immunocompromised status. So again, I think that those are things that we are all getting better at learning to live with the pandemic. I imagine that different public health orders are helping with that situation as well. One of the things that is another part of our operational decisions and how we need to roll is a decision that Manitoba High School Athletic Association has provided for all schools in the province. So Manitoba High School Athletic Association is sort of the governing body for all sports, and we've also talked about student mental health. So we are absolutely going down the road of organized sports and having our teams practicing and competing and preparing athletes to have a season. But at this time, we're not having spectators at games. And I know sometimes that's, parents would very much like to be there supporting their child, but this is in place so that the kids can continue safely participating in sports. We've heard about their mental health and well-being and how important it is to socialize and be active. And if that's the way that we can make sure that we do that safely, then I do want to advocate for supporting our students when they're playing their sports and we don't have any additional spectators in the buildings and or venues. The criteria for isolation as close contacts, as you may have heard in the Free Press, changed today. This is still the current link, so part of what the province does is they put a current link on the website so that when they make changes, it should take you to the current link. We'll also send that out and make sure that we have the current link out to everybody. The biggest changes, and I'll try to do that in sort of a nutshell, prior to now, it was a 14-day isolation if you were a close contact or were a positive case, and that has dropped down to a 10-day isolation. There's also been a change in terms of who would be deemed close contacts and whether a whole household needs to self-isolate. So one of the big changes that came through an announcement at 2 o'clock this afternoon was around that if someone is sick in your household, they would go in for COVID testing, but the whole household does not need to isolate. As long as they are asymptomatic, double vaccination or full vaccination is also part of that contact tracing or close contact definition. So there are some new guidelines with that. There are also some new guidelines with contact tracing in classrooms in terms of students who are either fully vaccinated if they're 12 and over and or a combination of wearing masks is part of the public health contact tracing journey. Public health does the contact tracing because they are the only people who have access to vaccination status for students. So we are working closely with public health again on sharing information about who they need to be in touch with based on seating plans and the like. They're communicating with students and staff who might be close contacts. But those are differences from last year in terms of not having whole households needing to isolate. Those criteria are current on the website and we'll put something together again. It came out publicly at 2. I was on a meeting from 1 to 3 hearing the same information, so we'll get something out about that. And again, it's hot off the presses. My attempt at humor, the local wildlife, black bears in particular, are not doing a great job of physically distancing at this time of year. They are here, there, and everywhere. We had one up a tree at Edward Shire earlier in the week. So there is never a dull moment when you live in rural Manitoba. Lastly, an appreciative shout out to everybody because I know it's not easy. It's not easy, it's not fun, and it's sometimes really difficult and stressful to have to keep up with all of the current safety protocols. But we do need to practice keeping our distance and wearing our masks and washing our hands and staying home when we're sick. The biggest difference that we're hearing is staying home when you're sick and getting your vaccination as soon as you can. So those are the pieces that public health shares with us. I will advocate always for those safety protocols because that helps everybody to stay well. For the board, I also included for you a draft report status or a chart on what the reports are. So we came up with our reporting structure for this year, and I've gone through and shaded the reports on that second document so that you can kind of track the progress of what we're bringing to the board throughout the year. So you will see some orange highlighting on that draft document saying this is what we've brought. If it's not highlighted, like one of the things that I didn't highlight was student attendance on September 7th, because there weren't any students in attendance yet on September 7th. So I can't bring you that. It's stayed blank, and that's probably something we would revisit if this is going to be a living document and say that doesn't make sense to bring that at the first meeting. So that's the second document that's there. Unless there's questions, that's my report.
Thank you very much, Kathy. I know I just want to thank you and your staff again for dealing with all the changes that are coming at you guys daily from the province, and that continued into today. There was quite a few emails that I seen that came through. So yeah, thanks for that. Were there any questions for Kathy? Trustee Reed.
I'm just wondering, is there anything that the division can do about the bears? Over about a 4-kilometer distance in Lac du Bonnet, could be, there's at least 5 bears been sighted, or it sounds like 5, but it's hard, it's hard to identify because somebody will say, well, it was in my yard at 10 o'clock, and somebody else says, yeah, I saw it on the road at 12, and so you don't know if it's the same bear. But there seem to be a lot of bears wandering around Lac du Bonnet, and if an individual phones in and says, well, there's a bear in my yard, basically Resources says, well, is he bothering you? Well, yeah, he's bothering me because he's there, but he hasn't attacked me. And so they basically say, well, this is bear country, put up with it. And I can do a short addition to that. A couple of years ago, we had a bear about 50 meters from our house. It was up a tree, and we phoned and said we didn't, because the bear was up the tree, and then it would come down to eat and then go back up, and you got the kids out in the yard and stuff. So we phoned Resources. Resources wouldn't come. But then, fortuitously enough, we had one of those boxes on the hydro pole blew up, and so hydro was called out, and they came with a couple of trucks, and they looked and saw the bear and said, well, we're not fixing that till the bear is gone. So of course they phoned Resources, and Resources were there within 10 minutes taking the bear away. But if an individual calls, you don't get much help, it seems. And so I don't know, I'm just wondering, can the division put pressure on, or because I know there's a lot of young kids. I'm out there every morning at between 8 and 8:30, and I see a lot of kids going to school, and you just wonder, well, I mean, if that kid gets too close to a bear, it could be in trouble, and it kind of concerns me. So I guess that's it.
Thanks, Trustee Reed.
It's probably a good time to then offer some kudos because, again, my job has changed drastically in the last, I don't know how many months it is now, but I'm not picking up bear duty. Although I did. Scott was out there, the staff at the school were out there directing kids. We sent a message home on the phone. The local media is the reason we knew about it ahead of time, so they were on site, had texted me to let me know that that was going on, and we were able to call conservation to let the RCMP know so that everybody could kind of stop, drop, and come there and make sure that kids were safe. So kudos to everybody involved. Jason Zipprick made sure that the buses were heading in the right direction. It is kind of one of those, everybody steps up and does what they need to. I think the biggest piece I would say to parents is just, make sure that your kids are aware of what to do. If you're able to make sure they've got safe places to walk, or to keep a heads up as they're walking to school. If it's at all possible to drop them off in bear season, then hot diggity.
Thank you, Kathy. Trustee Barry had a question?
Oh, yes, thanks. Thanks for your report, Superintendent Timko. I just got one question. I had a parent from the early years school here in Beausejour contact me. I say it's not on your report, and I'm sure it wasn't, but just, I'm sure, is there any cases of COVID-19 in the early years school?
Yes, the only two that I'm aware of, and the way that we become aware of cases is either through public health contacting me and saying we have a positive case here, or a parent phoning the school and letting us know. The only two that we know about are one in Powerview and one at Springfield Middle School.
Oh, that's good. Thank you very much. I just wanted that parent to be assured that there's no cases there.
Thank you, Trustee Barry. Thank you, Superintendent Timko. On the phone, our trustees, Trustee Nicol and Trustee Rowland. Did you guys have any questions?
Yes. I'm not quite sure that whether I'm reading this right or not, but you said there is no grade 9 to 12 students going through TMO. you are not in, that is exclusive of the HUD-RED colonies, is that right?
So again, the TMO and the InformNet for immunocompromised students. So the division registers for any immunocompromised. Yes, our colonies use either HBNI or TMO as part of the remote delivery. So we didn't include those in the immunocompromised report.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Rowland?
No, I don't know questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Harris?
What kind of feedback have you had from staff, teachers, and principals as to how excited they are having kids in front of them full-time?
I can honestly say that I think everybody's really, really excited about being back in school. I think I said last meeting, I would have loved to come out the gate this season and say, good news, we are just business as usual, and there aren't any criteria or protocols or health orders. But I am one of the most proudest people of this division because all of our staff just do a bang-up job of making schools a really welcoming, inviting place for kids. And I think there are smiles underneath the masks because we can see joy in people's eyes as they're coming to school.
Thank you, Trustee Harris. Thank you, Superintendent Timko. Any other questions? Okay, so hearing none, we'll move on to 7.1, which is the Secretary Treasurer's Report. Mr. Carlton.
Thank you, Trustee Peczkowski. First thing I noticed, I'll put this up on the screen, I've got the wrong date on here, September 16th, which would have been Friday when I was working on it. Stacy, we can fix that, correct that? Thank you. All right, I feel like we're getting all bared out, but I'm going to talk about bears for one more minute, and you're going to wonder why in our maintenance department I have a picture of our big boy. That's the big guy that fell out of the tree. You can't see him very well. It's kind of a dark picture. The gentleman petting him there is Claudio, who is manager, proprietor of Red Lake Construction, who happens to be doing the Phase 2 HVAC replacement at Edward Schreier School. And what happened is the conservation guys came along and tranquilized the bear. He was about 25 feet up in the tree, and he kind of got wedged in between a couple of branches. So Claudio, thank goodness, had a boom truck with about a 60-foot boom on it, and he got some forks up there and literally poked the bear until it fell out of the tree. So thanks to Claudio for doing that. We made a progress payment to Red Lake for the Phase 2 HVAC replacement at Edward Schreier the next day, and I sent him an email joking that getting bears out of trees is a pretty lucrative business. So Claudio did a great job and helped us out a lot there. Speaking of Claudio and his team, the HVAC replacement Phase 2 is substantially complete. There's a little bit of work still going on at the school, but we expect that'll be mostly done by mid-October. So they really hustled all summer to get most of that done and minimize the impact on students coming back. A little bit of a change this year. Kathy talked about a lot of the changes that are coming through in COVID. The province has been clear since we came back to school that they feel surface transmission is not as significant as originally thought. So we're certainly reducing a lot of the requirements we have on cleaning surface. We're still doing a little bit of extra cleaning in bathrooms and high-touch surfaces, but not to the extent we did last year. So that's a pretty significant change for maintenance. Not in my report, but one more thing that I want to mention that Derek actually just sent me yesterday, and I really want to congratulate him. We got official notice that the renovation expansion of Dougal School, which of course was completed last year, has received gold certification through the LEEDS program. So that's a real feather in their cap. LEEDS is a program where promotes sustainability and environmentally friendly buildings, and gold certification is a high standard to get to. And we just got notification. I think he sent it to me on Monday. So great job to the contractors and Derek in managing that project. That is a real feather in our cap as a division to get gold certification on one of our buildings. ICT's had a heck of a busy summer as well. We took on a lot of extra devices during the COVID pandemic, and they've done a lot of work on implementing that. In fact, Gord said they're still kind of on the tail end of implementing some iPads and iPad carts into schools with the expectation they'll be done by the end of the month here. They also, John had to jump to the pump a bit, going back to the HVAC replacement at Edwards Shire. It impacted a lot of classrooms, a lot of the ventilation system, the walls were ripped out and ceilings, and didn't really realize that we had smart boards and projectors and all sorts of IT devices in those classrooms. So Bruce, it was one of those things where a week before school started, our IT department called all hands on deck. Bruce, our local technician here in Beausejour, got the rest of the team, and they did a great job to make sure everything was ready to go for the start of class. One thing I'll point out to the board is it's been kind of a hot button issue for us and for other divisions in Manitoba. Our insurance company is looking for us to make some changes to our IT system. There's a lot of well, this is global. A lot of call it ransomware hacking. Hackers will hack into your system and basically change a whole bunch of passwords and take ownership over your data, and then send you an email saying, pay us $1 million and we'll give you access back to your data. That's happening all over the place. So our insurance company is becoming more and more concerned about that, and they're asking us to implement what they call two-factor authentication. So you log in with a password, and then there'll be a secondary sort of set of security where perhaps you get a text to your phone with a code or something like that, and you have to enter that code. Just another layer of security. So Gord's been doing a lot of work on that. It's something that has sort of challenged every division across Manitoba because we use the same insurance provider through MSBA. So Gord and his colleagues in IT at every division across the province are faced with that. They're looking at getting something implemented possibly into January, and a heads up for trustees, if you're logging into the system, that will likely affect you as well eventually down the road when we're ready to implement. Transportation, we've talked a bit about. I just got a big help wanted sign up there, for trustees and for those of you watching at home. We're really tight on drivers, and we're having all hands on deck, brainstorming sessions, everything we can possibly do to try to get more drivers added back to the team. We could use standby drivers, we could use spare drivers. Certainly some of our parents are aware of the fact that we've had to combine routes and even cancel one route this year. So, the majority of transportation stays these days has been taken up with trying to attract drivers, develop ways to attract drivers, look at ways to combine routes. Ways in which we can try to make sure that on a daily basis we are delivering all our 3,800 roughly students to schools. And finally, finance. It's funny, I guess I'm getting a little bit older. I was a young accountant at one point in time too, but our audit procedure started this week, and 4 of our auditors trotted in to start doing some of the field work, and they all look pretty young to me. So we have 4 people in our office sitting at a desk, piling through paperwork and getting through the audit process. So, they'll probably do field work for the majority of this week, and that means sampling and testing invoices and getting copies of things. Then they generally head back to their office and do a bunch of data work on our trial balances and things like that. But they're out right now, so we'll be looking towards, again, a clean audit opinion. The MNP, was our auditor, obviously has been advised that the expectation is there's a presentation ready to go for our board meeting on the 19th of October, and we're still on track for that. Thanks to Tracy, and I said it for her presentation tonight, number 1, and number 2, all the hard work over the summer. She went through some of the processes. It was a lot of hard work getting that supply order done, and I've given her a pat on the back a few times, but can't say it enough. It was quite difficult. Payroll, we're working together now. All of our union agreements have been executed by the division. We've actually got CUPE side executing them right now, and we'll be in a position to start looking at rolling out some retroactive payments over the course of the next probably 2 or 3 pays so that they're not taxed to death on some of those things. And then Trustee Nickel and I will work together. We're looking at coordinating with Robin, who's obviously chair of the policy committee, to make sure we don't overlap, but we'll be looking at starting up finance committee meetings towards the end of this month, probably the 3rd Thursday each month. And that is my report. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, Mr. Carlton, for your report. Are there any questions for Mr. Carlton? Trustee Barry.
Yes, thanks for your report, Mr. Secretary Treasurer. The only question I got is the changes that the insurance company requested, is that going to result in increase in our insurance fees, or is it going to stay the same?
Basically, I mean, it's even a little more daunting than that, and you know, we'll certainly meet the deadline, but they've basically told us unless we do some of these things, they're not interested in insuring, which is, you know, it's high risk. You know, I've heard of organizations, large organizations that are held ransom by these people in terms of $1 million, but it's low incidence. It doesn't happen very often, but essentially, I guess the bottom line, Trustee Barry, is we need to implement if we want to be insured, period.
So it's not going to go up, our rate, and what is the time frame we have to complete it by? You said there's a time frame involved.
Yeah, so if we get this two-factor authentication implemented, the rate will not go up, and they're looking at a January 31st timeline to have it implemented.
Thank you, Trustee Barry and Secretary Carlton. Do we have any questions on the phone?
I have no questions.
I have no question.
Go ahead, Trustee. Oh, Trustee Nicola, you don't have any questions?
Yes, I have no questions.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Duma, you have a question?
Just inquiry. The Leeds Award, is there a letter that the board could see that copy, and could that be posted on our website? I'm not sure how it came to us.
Yeah, 100%. Derek did forward me a letter, and I'd be happy to circulate that to trustees. And yeah, it's something to be very proud of. We probably should put it on our website for sure.
Great, thank you for the suggestion, Trustee Duma. Okay, so hearing or seeing no other questions, thank you again, Scott, for your report. We'll move on to 8.0, 8.1 COVID costs. I apologize, Scott, but we're going to come right back to you.
Thanks, Trustee Pichkowski. Just quickly, you know, over the course of the summer, there hasn't been a lot of activity in terms of expenditures related to COVID. I've got a breakdown a little bit there, about $20,000, $21,920 over the course of July and August. Most of that relating still to cleaning supplies and then some extra cleaning duties. The province came out with their sort of direction on surfaces being low transmission sort of late in the summer. So for most of the summer, we were still doing extra cleaning in a lot of our office buildings and things like that. So that'll tail off. I mentioned last time the province has a fund of about $40 million that they're allocating to school divisions across Manitoba on a per pupil basis. Our share is expected to be just over $900,000. This is quite a bit lower than we received last year. Obviously, last year's funding from the province for COVID was about $1.7 million. But we certainly have some expenditures that are not expected to repeat. We had some major expenditures in maintenance for things like the video security that we put in and water bottle filling stations. Obviously, that was a one-time cost. Some of the extra ICT resources we put in place, iPads and devices and things like that, would be a one-time cost. Again, we're looking at reducing some of the extra cleaning that we've been doing on surfaces, given the direction from the province of Manitoba. So, you know, we will get less funding, but we also anticipate that our expenditures this year will be substantially lower than they have been in the past. So I'm going to knock on wood right now and say that we won't get a fourth wave. You know, and the other thing that I think Kathy and I talked about a little bit, you know, and we'll certainly do more work on this, is sort of assessing where our students are at and directing the rest of that funding into some of the things that our students need going forward into this school year. So that'll sort of be the next step.
Thank you, Scott. Were there any questions on 8.1? Okay, so we'll move on to 8.2, which is our decision-making matrix review. It's just an item that's staying on our agenda. It's something the board is continuously working on, but it's just there. There's nothing to address it at the moment for today. Moving on to 8.3, Planning Springfield Project Update. Public hearings for Oak Bank South Secondary Plan and West Pine Ridge Secondary Plan. I believe this is for information. Scott, did you have any comments on it?
No, just briefly. I mean, this is obviously one of the more significant, or two of the more significant developments going on in Springfield. you know, there's public hearings, and certainly trustees, I encourage you to attend. Stacy and I still need to sort of get together with the RM of Springfield, and we still want to plan that meeting with them. So we don't have a date set for that yet, but I think that's something we'll get on early next week in terms of trying to line that up.
Okay, thank you, Scott. And just in addition to that, there'll be trustees joining you for those meetings, is that right?
Yeah, the intent was to try and set something up with their CAO to try and get as many counselors and perhaps Tiffany involved, and then certainly trustees would be invited to attend.
So thank you. Were there any questions on 8.3? Trustee Duma, go ahead.
I'm going to attend that meeting, but also for people to know that all of the RM meetings are online. You can watch them and you can go into their history and see what they're about, and they're also their agendas and their minutes, so easy to track and see what they're doing, and then watch the videos to see what the discussion is. So I'll be on that on Thursday.
Thank you, Trustee Duma. Any other questions? Okay, so we'll move on to 8.4, which is the grade 1 to 8 report card data. And I believe we're moving to Superintendent Timko.
Yeah, so one of the reports we wanted to talk about educationally was around the report card data and how are our kids doing. So I wanted to do a bit of a backgrounder, and I'll just put that up on the screen. So again, the reason we use report card data is because the province of Manitoba uses a standard report card across the province. So every school across this province uses the same report card, same categories, same criteria, same subjects. And I put the link in there in case anybody wants to dig a little deeper into the document about what all of that is and have all of the details. What we do in Sunrise School Division is we take our report card data and we pull it into an application called Power BI application of Office 365, and that lets us sort, analyze, report on student report card data. It allows us to look at stuff from all of the schools across the division. We can zone in on individual schools, we can look at things by grade level, we can look at report card categories and by other demographic categories like gender, like Indigenous status, like children in care, and all those kinds of things. The most important piece for me is that Power BI allows schools to look at their own data as a school by classroom, by grade level, by report card category, and other demographic categories. So teachers in their time are looking at all of that report card data and making decisions close to classrooms. So for here, I've done a PowerPoint, and I'll take you through that really, really quickly. You've got the whole thing and have had time to look at it, or can continue looking at it. It shows us things in the areas of critical thinking, problem solving, reading, and writing. So when I flip to the PowerPoint, the first slide in each of those categories is everything across our division. So when we look at a grade 1 to 6 slide, that is every student in grade 1 to 6. On the right-hand side, there's a shaded box that then tells you it's the grade 1s that we're looking at, and then the grade 2s and the grade 3s. So you can kind of look on the right and see that that's the category we're presenting. Some things that you might not know is if we have an incomplete for someone or a not applicable, those codes are used for reasons like we have a student who might be on an individual plan. We have a student who might have transferred into our school division and they've gotten here like 2 days before the report card date went out. So they might have an incomplete or an NA, but anytime we use an incomplete or an NA, that would have to be approved by the principal, and there is an explanatory comment on the report card. The ND means not yet demonstrated. So that would be the code that we would look at saying that a child or someone on the report card hasn't met that outcome. They aren't there yet. And they might not be there yet at the grade level appropriate. So when they have an ND, it means they haven't got a required understanding and application of those concepts and skills. At the board level, I wanted to also include what should you be looking at when you want to look at that and answer questions to the public about, hey, how are we doing? What are those dollars, we're giving you? What are they doing? The high level analysis when you look at those grids should be around, if I take a look at term 1 and term 2, where are those kids at on the report card? If they've started the grade level at a 1 or a 2, are they progressing on their way through the 3s and 4s by the end of term 3? And when I successfully complete a grade, I finish grade 3, and I finish grade 3 at a 4, I probably am going to start grade 4 back at a 1 or a 2 because I'm learning new stuff. So at the beginning of each grade level, I might be a little bit further down there, but what we want to look for is progression through the grids. At the division, we can drill down into those particular topics and we can look at those skills and try to decide if there's supports or interventions that we might need to be doing as a division or in a targeted or informed way. And I would say that report card data is probably one of our most reliable and main sources of looking at information to inform classroom practice. The very best thing a teacher could be doing is looking at what are the kids in their classroom doing at that time? How are they progressing on the outcomes? Because that report card talks about the curricular outcomes that they should be working on. If I grab the report card data and just do a quick spin through here, again, I won't go through each of them, but what I would like to sort of say to you is that as a board, and maybe I'm going to date myself here, we used to have these little cartoon books where you would flip them and the little corner would have a moving picture cartoon thing. And that's a little bit of what you want to do here, is that if I roll and I look at this first one, I want to say, okay, how did our people do from term 1 to term 3? I'm looking at this bright blue bar going down as I go across the terms. I'm looking at the orange bar kind of staying the same, but I'm looking at the purple bar where we have kids getting 4s, which is the top of their game, going up. So if I play the little cartoon flip book and I roll through the screens, I should be able to see that purple bar going from small to big and small to big and small to big, and I can say to you in a pretty quick glance that I think we're doing a bang-up job with our kids in terms of progressing them to where they need to be at the end of the grade level. There's a zillion other questions that data is going to bring for us, and that's exactly what it should be doing. So this Power BI is something that all of our principals, all of our student support staff, all of our classroom teachers have access to and use, and they can drill down and they can click off different boxes and different grade levels and different topics and be able to slice and dice their data at just the click of a mouse. So I wanted to bring this for you for the grade 1 to 8 as kind of a quick look at how are we doing. I won't go through each of those because a lot of the things that you'll see are that we are progressing really quite well in the grade 1 to 8 area. So unless there's questions, I won't take up too much more time, but it's pretty cool stuff.
Thank you very much, Kathy. Were there any questions on 8.4 for Trustee Timko? Or sorry, for Superintendent Timko, Trustee Harris.
On the last slide, you mentioned teachers can click down the schools. Can a teacher at one school compare to other schools and to see if they're ahead or behind, or I'll leave the question at that.
The answer is no. They get to look at their own data, but what we can do is we can provide that from the principals and say, hey, you know, if I wanted to look at where are we at in terms of all of the grade 2s across the division, we give them the divisional look, and then where do they sit compared to the division would be one. But teachers are looking at just their own data unless they're working on a data cohort that's digging into something different. Great question.
Thank you. Any other questions? Trustee Duma?
So when we look at this chart, this the very first screen, it doesn't identify the school. Is it being purposely taken out? Okay, so this is a school that's a 1 to 6 possibly, and you've got a population in there? That's what it is, right? The number of students? Okay, thanks.
So the first screen is all of the kids in grade 1 to 6. So when you look at that first one, it's every kid in grade 1 to 6. When I roll to the second screen, it's all of the grade 1s across all of our schools. So every grade 1 in our school division. And the next one is every grade 2 in our school division. And so it's not broken down by schools. Here it is everyone in the division.
Thank you. Any other questions on the phone?
No questions for me.
Trustee Barry, you had a question?
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand this chart here. What's, on the second one here, the 3, that seems to be the highest one throughout every chart. And that's everybody at a level 3, is that correct? So you have 4 levels in here. Then you have other NA, ND. What's IN stand for again?
IN is an incomplete.
Oh, incomplete.
And, yeah, and again, that might be someone who is, working on a different program, or it might be someone who's just transferred into our school. If you click on that link, it will also have a whole page description of everything that might qualify for an incomplete. And so our principals and all of our teachers know what those criteria are before they can use that category. In terms of the 3, most of our students are at a level 3, probably on the brink of a 3 to a 4, and that report card document will talk about what the criteria or the rubric is for how do I assess a 1, how do I assess a 2 or a 3 or a 4.
Okay, so hearing no other questions, we'll move on to 8.5, which is our graduation data. And we'll go back to, yeah, thank you.
So again, this is also a second report that we wanted to look at, and one of the things that is always really, really difficult when we talk about graduation reports is that if I take a look at this first little bit and I say, that's lovely that I can tell you how many graduates we had at each of the schools, 86 and 32 and 28 and all of those numbers, unless we know how many were possible to have graduated that year, those numbers are just sort of numbers that are floating on the page. So the first part here is how we have classically looked at our graduate. As we said this, how many people have graduated each year. I do want to leave this on the screen because this is an extreme accomplishment for all of our folks in terms of the Governor General's Award. So I'm going to leave that on the screen and talk about the rest of what we have here so that our public can see the names and you can see the names of our Governor General medal winners. Part of what the province has adjusted is the link that's a little further down here for trustees. If you click on that provincial link, it now aggregates data for graduation in terms of a 4-year graduation or a 5-year graduation or a 6-year graduation, because the province has sort of said it's not necessarily that everybody fits into the 4-year timeline. And that's important because not everybody does fit into the 4-year timeline. Some students have jobs. Some students may have had to take a leave from schooling for a little while. It's not sort of the standard that everybody just get through this in 4 years. So they have data that talks about 4-year, 5-year, and 6-year. The second piece that the province has really done a great job of adjusting is they used to just take a look at a given school and say, how many grade 9s did you have 4 years ago? And my classic example would be that if I had 100 grade 9s 4 years ago, and then over the course of their high school career, 10 kids moved into the community, the province would look at that and say, you had 100 grads in grade 12, good news, your graduation rate is 100%. You started with 100 4 years ago, you graduated 100, good job you. Except that there's those 10 kids who moved in that haven't graduated, or there's a difference. So the province has adjusted that and is looking at things tagged to their MET number. So they're tracking kids and saying, here is your adjusted graduation rate, and that's been great because we were struggling with how to get that. And so we use the provincial data for a lot of our graduation information and are right up to speed with what we should be doing. The next sort of neat level that I wanted to look at, and I'm going to try to keep these guys up here. The next important thing was to take a look at what happens for kids in their last year. So we're taking a different slice this coming year, and this is new and I'm not sure what it's going to tell us. So I'm going to lay it out there and say this is something new that we're going to do. We've now grabbed the number of credits that all of our high school kids have right now. And a high school student needs 30 credits to graduate, and they have certain ones that are required. So we're going to take a look at all of the students who could graduate this year. They could be in grade 10 and have enough credits to graduate. That's pretty rare, but they could be early graduators. They could be in grade 13 or grade 14 and just be hitting that mark of, I've now finally got enough credits that this is my year to graduate. And we want to do a little digging into what happens in that last year. How many of those students who enter what I would call their final graduation year hit the mark and get through, and where do they go from there? And I'm not sure what it's going to dig out for us. We've got some really robust grad stats from the province, but this is something that we wanted to dig into and look at. So stay tuned in June. I'll bring you some information about what that has shown us.
Thank you, Kathy. Were there any questions for Superintendent? Okay, so we'll move on to hearing none.
I don't have a question for Kathy. I have a question for the chair and the board.
Sure.
I see this information coming forward. I think it's good. I think it would be nice if there could be an opportunity, maybe at one board meeting, where we actually set aside an hour where we just discuss it and ask, go through questions. Once we've looked at this for a while and sunk our teeth into it, maybe the board could actually spend some time at a public meeting and just pull some stuff together and have a conversation about what this means, and probably ask more questions. Maybe there's some things that we want to see that aren't in here. Just an idea to put forward.
Sure. Thank you, Trustee Duma. We'll note that. And maybe if you want to send an email to the agenda setting committee too, that'd probably be first course of action. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Okay, so hearing none, we'll move on to 8.6, which is youth health and wellness clinics. Back to Superintendent.
I'll be really brief. We've had a teen health clinic in École Powerview School for a number of years, and I've included the information about the communities of Whitemouth and Lac du Bonnet exploring a teen health clinic in their communities. So we have Derek Edwards and Lisa Nowakowski, who are going to be the nurse practitioners who will be working with our teen health clinics in the Interlake Eastern Health Authority.
Thank you very much, Kathy. Any questions? Trustee Barry.
So are these individuals an employee of the health authority?
Yes.
Okay, so hearing no other questions, we'll move on to 8.7, which is the bus driver recruitment, and I can move to our Secretary Treasurer, Mr. Carlton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick update for the board and really also for the public. We know we're challenged this year, and we've discussed it at the board level and certainly at the management level in terms of sourcing a sufficient number of bus drivers to make sure that our buses are getting kids to school. So I just wanted to touch base super quick. Sorry, Stacey, I'm going to take over the screen for a second. On some of the things that we're doing. Certainly leave the door open for any suggestions, and I know Trustee Nicol had sent some suggestions that are great. Thanks, John. I appreciate that. I don't think we necessarily need to take time tonight brainstorming, but I kind of wanted to get it in everybody's head. Hey, something pops into your head. Have we tried this? For sure, feel free to send me a note or Jason, or this is going to be an ongoing thing, I think, for a bit. I mentioned the fact that traditionally we've had 4 standby drivers. We've had 2 in Beausejour, 2 in Oakbank. We're going to look at increasing that just to give us a sort of a roster of drivers that we can have on buses at any given point in time. We posted for those, so it's a position where it's a little bit different than a spare bus driver. A spare bus driver is certainly a driver with a Class 2 driver's license with a bus endorsement. But they stay at home, don't really get paid unless we call them and we need them. Standby driver is a driver that would come in every day, and they do get a minimum amount of pay on a daily basis just for being on standby, for being available for us. So we thought that might be a little more attractive than being a spare bus driver per se. We're implementing a referral or an incentive program where our staff across the division, and we've sent out flyers that are in staff rooms at every facility across the division, may receive a cash reward for referring individuals who wish to become drivers. We went to that extreme. We've replaced revised, bolder advertisements in the papers and certainly on the Sunrise website. We are looking at placing a couple of the big white sort of mobile signs on the side of the highway, advertising for bus drivers out by Gillis School likely, and then looking at the highway near the bus garage on Selch. We're looking at decals for all of our Sunrise vehicles. PTU has advised us that we cannot put decals or advertisement on buses, which is fair, but we're looking certainly at the other vehicles we have as a division, our courier vehicle, our service vehicles, things like that. Reader boards, certainly at every facility across the division, all our schools, some of our schools have outside reader boards where they encourage the placement of advertisement. Staff rooms, certainly as well, we've posted positions. And then finally, we've even gone to the extra step of reaching out to some of our local businesses in an effort to place flyers. Perhaps when you shop at the co-op, they would put a flyer in your bag when you're done shopping, just to try and get the message out there that much more. So those are some of the things we're doing. Again, you know, I wouldn't want to take time in a board meeting to perhaps do brainstorming, but I do want to throw this out there, and certainly if any trustees or absolutely any member of the public has ideas that we may be able to implement and sort of think outside the box a little bit, we're absolutely open to anything that may work.
Thank you very much, Scott. I think what we'll do at this point is we'll recommend that trustees, if you have ideas, maybe just send them to the entire group, copying everybody, and then that way we can share ideas with Scott if that works. Moving on to, sorry, go ahead, Trustee Duma.
So my question is, if it becomes critical, do you start driving the bus, Mr. Treasurer?
We have, I've actually talked to our transportation manager, and we're going to get myself and Kathy and Stacy and Jackie, and we're all going to get our class 2 and get out there in the bus. We've actually considered that. Yeah, Trustee Nickel mentioned some of the teachers, but certainly some of the staff. We would look at doing that. We, just an FYI, and I kind of want to give her a pat on the back, Bernadette is one of our new office staff over at transportation who was a bus driver and is now working in administration. Bernadette has been tasked with hopping on a bus at 8 o'clock in the morning most days over the last couple of weeks, and then coming into the office and doing her regular job as well.
Thank you, Trustee Duma. Thank you, Scott. Glad to hear that teams are kind of pulling together in a difficult time. I know I got a couple messages recently from parents asking about that letter, and I just replied back that we're in dire straits with our drivers. So, okay, so moving on to 8.8, vaccination clinics in schools, and I apologize, Kathy, but I'm going to come right back to you.
I am going to take a little bit of time on this one because this is an important one, and this is one that is probably causing a lot of angst and a lot of polarization and lots of things in our society. So I am going to take a little bit of time and walk through this one because it's important, and it is something that we want to make sure that we are clear and transparent and communicating right up front with everybody. Nothing has changed with the Public Health Act, and nothing has changed with the way that school divisions have run vaccination clinics, and we've been doing this for a long, long, long time. So I wanted to start with, how does that run in a school? So in school clinics in Sunrise and most other school divisions, but I can only speak to Sunrise, in school clinics in Sunrise have always been run using parental consent forms. So communication from Public Health goes to families, and they sometimes mail those, and they sometimes bring a stack to the school office, and the kids bring them home. And there now is an online form. So one of the documents here is also an online form. The consent forms get completed by parents, and they're brought back with the student on immunization day. Our role as a school division is providing space. It's like a community use of schools. Do we have space? Can we use this classroom? Can we use that space? And is there somewhere where Public Health can set up to do a vaccination clinic? The vaccination clinics are not like what you have seen, or they're not walk-ins or walk-up approach. Public health nurses in our system work through the staff in the office, and they find the identified students with signed consent forms, and then they bring them to the area, they do the vaccination, they monitor them, and then off they go back to their class because they've signed the consent form. So it might look a little like the school secretary buzzing into a classroom and saying, is Scott Carlton there? Could he please come to the office? Is Jackie Julian there? Could she please come to the office? The public health nurse meets that student, takes them to the area, looks at their consent form, and does the vaccination, and on they go. It isn't a walk-in or walk-up approach. Having said that, it is important to look at what the Public Health Act actually says, because that is the current legislation that governs, and I'm going to say the administration of all health procedures in the province. Not ones that I agree with or disagree with or anything. It is the law for public health in the province. And the law for public health in the province allows 16 and 17-year-olds to make legal decisions about their own personal health choices with regard to vaccination or any other medical intervention. They can go in to see a doctor or a public health nurse or a nurse practitioner or to an emergency room, and they can make decisions about their own health interventions. I don't control that. That is the public health law. In school vaccination clinics, public health nurses will contact parents first as a first step unless a person explicitly indicates that they do not want their parents to be notified. And that's a 16 or a 17-year-old. There is a process in public health for youth under 16 to be assessed as mature minors, and they may be allowed to give informed consent for medical interventions of any kind. So Manitoba Public Health has an organized and established protocol, and they assess the competency level of someone who is under 16 years of age. What is that protocol? I don't have it because I'm not a public health nurse. I don't administer it. I'm not trained to make that decision about whether they have the ability to do that. But public health, in a hospital, in a clinic, in an emergency room, wherever a student may go to see a medical health professional, has this ability. And that's the law, and it has been for a long, long time. So what Sunrise School Division has done right now is we are working on an agreement between the health authority prior to having any in-school vaccination clinics being organized or run in our Sunrise schools. Again, it would be really clear to stipulate the consent criteria required for the in-school vaccine clinics. And we are not having any in-school clinics until we reach an agreement and we can communicate out to parents and publicize on our school and divisional websites the dates and times and I guess criteria or the way in which our school clinic would operate. The board, the Sunrise School Board, can decide that they are not having vaccination clinics in their schools, but that doesn't change that after-hours clinics can be organized in a community for students or for the public to receive their vaccinations, whether that happens in a school or a community center. So I didn't want to be unclear here or anywhere else what the law says about health interventions. I wanted to be absolutely transparent with what people are needing to know about this. Our business in schools is not administering vaccinations. It is not deciding who is competent to make those decisions or not make those decisions. Our role as a school division is, do we offer space to a vaccination clinic that is run by public health? And so I wanted to be really, really clear about that and hopefully address some of the questions that people might have about vaccination clinics and how they have been run or what goes on with those prior to any discussion or decision.
Thank you, Kathy. Are there any questions for Jen Timko? Trustee Inslee.
Thank you. With regard to the youth under 16 being assessed as mature minors, sorry I'm not looking at you, Kathy, but obviously I just want to read what's on the document. It mentions that Manitoba Public Health has the organised and established protocols for assessing the competency level of the youth under 16 years of age. How can parents be how can parents get more information regarding these assessment tools, and the parents can be confident that, say, their 8-year-old is not going to just agree to some medical or immunisation. I know that I messaged you earlier on this, and obviously it's a Manitoba Public Health thing, but I just want parents to be comfortable and confident that they know who to go to and what those or how they can find what those assessment tools involve.
And it's a great question. I think going to your own medical practitioner would probably be the place and space to start that conversation. I also think that having the conversation with your children is probably an important piece as well, to make sure that you're having that discussion, with your children about what it is that you want and what they should be thinking about and all of those things. But the protocol would probably be available through your own medical practitioner to say, hey, what are the steps? I don't know what they are. I don't work for public health, and I have enough on my plate here.
So it wouldn't be the parent going to, I don't know, the province or whatever. You would recommend or advise that the process would be to go to their medical practitioner.
I think that your medical practitioner would be able to point you in the right direction. I haven't been on the public health website to look at what that protocol is. I guess one of the other pieces is, we have clinicians here in our division, so we have psychologists and we have social workers, and they will have protocols and things like that that we look after, and what we can and can't share. I don't know where it lives on the public health website, and I don't know who the person is to contact that might get that for you. So I think probably medical practitioner makes the most sense. Someone else has the answer. Let me know.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Barry?
Yes, thanks for the information, Superintendent Timko. I have two questions. One question I think you answered, but I want to be clear on this. Has there been vaccines, clinics offered in Sunrise facilities in the past? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, and my next question have we got any dates from the province, so to speak, as of this day, of any future clinics?
They had dates, and I've been in direct communication with the 3 people who organize clinics and said we are on hold for right now, and they will move any dates to the future until that's all settled.
So I have a question actually. So would it be fair to say, or I guess the question would be that, and you mentioned it, but I just want to clarify so people understand. So if vaccine clinics are held within a school division, those clinics are run by public health. The school division is providing a space to do that only. We're not making any decisions regarding the health matters in those instances, and the board also does have the ability not to have vaccine clinics in our schools. Would that be accurate? Okay, thank you.
Yes, it would.
Thank you. Trustee Duma.
Thank you for the clarification. I just thought it would be of note that we have had concerns from parents, and we've heard them about having vaccine clinics in the school specific to this vaccine, not to other vaccines. And so we know people have heard about it, so I'm glad that this is part of the public meeting tonight, because if we do now get feedback from parents and they may want to email us or talk to us about it, I think this is now their opportunity, because I know there were concerns that they didn't have input into the mask conversation. So I'm glad it's discussed tonight. I just noticed that on the Garden Valley School Division website that they did a community petition to keep the vaccine clinics out of their school. It was done a while ago. So some people are talking about it. So just thank you for the information.
Thank you, Trustee Duma. I guess the other thing I would mention too, or ask, is that would it also be accurate to say, Superintendent Timko, that in the past, I keep calling you Trustee, that in the past, okay, Kathy, that in the past, within Sunrise School Division, any vaccine clinics that were held, the students did need full informed consent at any age in the schools. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the way that we've run them, it has been sort of the call out of class, process. It hasn't been the walk up or the walk by. When we meet with our public health nurses, the law would allow them to offer an intervention to someone who just popped in, but we don't run them in that kind of way. The assurance that public health gave to me in a meeting and then on a follow-up phone call was their first line of approach is always calling parents first. They've said that, a kid said, oh, I forgot my I forgot the consent form. It's on the dishwasher at home. My mom's going to kill me. They'll pick up the phone and they'll call a parent and do a verbal. That's their first line of approach automatically right away. But it is important to know that if a student should walk into any healthcare provider's office and say, I would like to A, B, or C, and they are 16 or 17, they get to do that and not have parents informed. That is the law right now. Whether I like it or don't like it, that's the way that it is. That's the important piece. I think that answers it, yeah?
It does, thank you. And I guess it's just that, so that's true within the community. And I think I've heard some parents' concerns as well, and I guess what I'm trying to say is that that wouldn't be happening in our schools unless this board approves that to take place, correct?
So my intention would be to bring that to our October 5th board meeting if we have the approach and say, hey, would like to have vaccination clinics on these dates, to bring that at the October 5th board meeting. If this board has a motion saying that they do or don't want to continue with vaccination clinics as they are, or, that is the board's decision.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Inslee.
Just one thought that came into my head. Do we have room to do these clinics? Because we don't have room to distance the children, so do we actually have room to have clinics?
Yeah, so very typically they're in smaller places like offices or like the guidance office and those kinds of places. We have said no to vaccine clinics for other things if we don't have space. So that's always been a question of the health authority is, do you have space for the clinic? But we do have space if we have the dates and we can provide those things. There is space available.
Thank you. Were there any other questions on the phone? Okay. So we'll move on to committee reports and recommendations. So 8.9 policy committee update. Maybe I'll go to the chair anyways and ask.
Policy is having their first meeting next Tuesday, and we are scheduled for the second Thursday of each month thereafter.
Thank you, Trustee Harris. Moving on to 8.10, Finance Committee. There's no check register, is that? Okay. But I will go to Finance Committee, 8.11, Finance Committee update. I'll go to Chair Trustee Nicol. Did you want to make any comments?
Yeah, we're having plus one on October, the third Thursday in October. I don't remember the date. And then we're going to try to do it on the third Thursday of every month. We haven't met as a committee yet, so that's not finalized. But once we meet on the first Thursday, the first meeting, then we'll make sure that we have all the dates to the end of the year.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Nicol. Moving on to, I'll mention that I'm the signing authority for September 2021, so Trustee Pachkowski is. Moving on to 9.0, professional development. There is no information under there. 10.0, financial monitoring report. There is no financial monitoring report. 11.1, chairperson, board correspondence. So there's two items there. There's a chairperson correspondence sent and received. And then 11.2 is a Dougal Daycare letter of support. Moving on to 12.0.
Can I just speak to that letter? Just for interest, we did receive a request from the executive director of the Dougal Daycare Center, just asking if the board could write a letter in support, or someone, the chair supposedly, or myself, to write a letter of support as they were applying for a grant through the Manitoba Tire Stewardship Program, where they were trying to hope to get some money so they could do improvements to their outdoor playground. So that is a letter that is.
Thank you very much, Trustee Duma, and thank you for making that connection with the daycare and working with them closely and bringing that back to the board. Appreciate that. 12.0, nice to know information items. Excuse me. There was two articles in the Clipper. So one was titled "Teachers Back at the Grind After Break." That was September 16th, 2021. And on the same date, there was another one, Sunrise School Division sells Green Church. Under A, upcoming meetings, 12.3, board meeting October 5th, 2021, And 12.4 is a board meeting on October 19th, 2021. Moving on to 13.0 press releases. There's no items in there. 14.0 questions from the public. 1 second. Okay, so we do have a few questions from a member of the public. It's for, the questions are from Melissa Krischuk. I will read them out. I would just kindly remind the public that if they do have questions to provide their name and civic address. So question 1 is, why does the superintendent need to see doctor's notes when the province has said it's not required? Do we have a response, Kathy?
Yep. So I'm assuming that this is for mask exemptions, and with the mask exemption application or request, there's some clear criteria about a pre-existing condition, or there is, an age level. There might be a cognitive delay where someone can't put a mask on, and so those are things that are known to the division. We know that about certain students in our school division. So we're asking for a medical note from a medical practitioner if someone qualifies for that but doesn't want to share their medical information. So I, as a superintendent, don't see anybody's medical information. I see a note that says this person qualifies for a mask exemption. And that's what the doctor would provide, because I don't then know which criteria they would meet. We do have the authority to ask for that, so that is in the legal preamble of the letter. And there is legal precedence for that as well.
Thank you. The second question is, what is being done about mask-free zones?
It's a great question, and again, in all honesty, we just heard today that there are potentially some changes coming, and the changes coming might reduce some of the mask-free time, and I don't know this for certain, but I will share anyways. Mask-free zones right now are when students are 2 meters away from another person, when they are outside, or when they are completing or when they are participating in physical activity. If they are in a classroom and there is a spot where we can be 2 meters away, there can be a mask break. If they are working in the hallway and they are 2 meters away from someone, there can be a mask break. But what we heard from the province today at their just sort of their debrief about the press release was public health was talking about, with the Delta variant, that we shouldn't be taking we shouldn't be taking prolonged mask breaks, that our masks should be on the whole time we're inside, even when we are 2 meters away from someone, because of the transmissibility, I think is the word they used, around the Delta variant. That is not come out in any written form, but that was something that was shared at a meeting today. So schools are doing that to the best of their ability in the spaces they can in classrooms or in libraries or hallways, but for sure the places that are mask-free are outdoors, physical activities, and whenever people are 2 meters apart.
Thank you, Kathy. There's 2 more questions. The second last one is, what happens if an outbreak is declared in a school? Does the school shut down?
Another good question. We don't declare the outbreak, so what happens with public health is that public health has a dashboard for tracking any positive cases. And today in the press release, I believe that they talked about 3 different criteria for when they would declare an outbreak. I think off the top of my head it has to do with 3 cases in a school, whether those are related to one another, whether there's a possibility of transmissibility in the school, and then they would make a decision about who needs to stay home and who needs to isolate. Mask use and vaccine also plays into that. So if there are positive cases in places and spaces where the close contacts are fully vaccinated and are masked all the time, then declaring an outbreak diminishes, and public health would take that into consideration before it is they declare an outbreak or before it is they identify close contacts. Public health does all of the close contact identification. So we would share seating plans, we would talk about who's wearing masks, but public health makes the decision around who might be a close contact. They would then tell us whether we are shifting into remote learning for a certain group of people. What we would contribute to that would be that if public health told us that the entirety of a grade 5 classroom were all close contacts and had to isolate, we would probably shift to remote learning for that class. They were very clear that they are not aiming to shut down any schools and that their full aim is to have as many kids in schools as much as possible for their own well-being and mental health and socialization.
Thank you. And the last one from Melissa is, why is Sunrise looking for an indemnification agreement to be signed with the health authority, and will this agreement be made public?
And so my understanding of the indemnification agreement is just to give that clear delineation of whose role it is to look after health and vaccination. So the school division doesn't do vaccinations and doesn't do public health, so that indemnification agreement just makes sure that we have a clear and written document that says that that's not our job as a school division to look after the health or vaccinations of students. I don't know if it will be made public or not. It is a legal document, I think, that is signed between the school division and the province of Manitoba, but I will look further into that and find out whether that can be public or not.
Okay, great. Thank you, Kathy. So our next question is again from another individual. And again, I'm just going to remind the public, if you are submitting questions, to submit your civic address with your name as well. So this question is from Christina Steffs. And I think I can actually answer the questions that are asked here. So, will parents be notified by email if there is vaccine clinic coming to school? So we just sort of talked about that in our meeting, and they would be. Will it be on the website? It would be on the website. She says, I heard in newspapers that schools won't give vaccines to kids without parental consent, but as soon as school over, they will be administer vaccines without parental consent, or will they administer vaccines without parental consent? So we've answered those questions as well in our meeting. I'm not sure if you're listening or not, but I think the question was submitted before, so that's not what I meant. But we did talk about it at the meeting. If you have any further questions from what we discussed in the meeting, I would encourage you to submit your question by email, and we'll respond further. So there was one more question, or one more individual that had a number of questions, Kevin Reinhardt. So Kevin, I would obviously thank you for your email, thank you for your questions. You do have quite a few questions here, and they are, some of them have been answered, I believe, in our throughout our meeting this evening, but there's also some very complex questions, and it seems as though you may have asked the questions on a previous date as well, so I apologize if somebody hasn't got back to you, but we will be responding to your questions. I just want to see if there's one that hasn't been addressed at this point. Yeah, well, they are complex, so we can definitely respond by email. If there are questions further past that you want asked at another public meeting, then definitely bring them forward at our next meeting.
So, Jared, just on that one, I'll circulate that to all trustees, just simply because we're not reading it tonight, but we'll definitely endeavor to get back to Kevin on those.
For sure, thank you. And they are very great questions as well. And I would like to thank all the members of the public who brought questions forward to the board. Trustee Berry?
Just a clarification on this last questions. There were multiple questions. We should ascertain where this individual lives in Sunrise, what their address is before staff goes to all the work and answers.
Yeah, I would agree, and that's, again, just to be transparent with the public as well as, in our bylaws, we do ask, and at the beginning of the meeting I noted as well, that we would ask for your name and civic address, just to further what Trustee Berry had stated. So going forward, if you haven't submitted your civic address, we won't be reading out the questions at the meeting. Thank you again for engaging, and thank you for the questions.
Just as an addition, could we also let people know that if they want to come as a delegation, we're not having delegations in the room right now, right? Is that true? Right.
Yes, it is, yeah.
But they still can be online and make a presentation if they'd like, and they could access the Secretary's office to arrange to make a presentation, correct? Okay, thanks.
That is also correct, and thank you very much, Trustee Duma. Absolutely, if there's a parent or a group of parents that want to make a presentation to the board, there's a way to do that, and they just have to contact our Secretary-Treasurer to go ahead with that. Trustee Inslee?
All of the parents' questions that have just come in, we do get to see them, yeah. Scott, you normally forward them to us, don't you? Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Sorry, just one more that just kind of came in at the last second here that I'll throw on the table, and I'm not sure if we have an answer tonight, but if not, we can certainly get back. Again, from Melissa Kreschek, who has now also provided her civic address. Has the division ever had an indemnification document signed for other clinics? I don't know if you know, Kathy. I'm certainly not aware. Yeah. I'm not aware of the answer. Kathy's shaking her head as well, but we can definitely research that and get back to you with the answer.
Okay, thank you, Trustee. Geez, I'm calling everybody Trustee this evening. Thank you, Secretary-Treasurer Carlton. Okay, so item next on the agenda is 15, so we're going to move to in-camera because we haven't finished our in-camera meeting. So we're going to move to in-camera, and we will come back to regular when we're finished with our in-camera. I'm not sure what time that will be, so the meeting, I believe, remain, Scott, go ahead.
Yeah, just for the public that is watching, I don't think, and Kathy, you're going to kick me in the shin if I'm wrong, I don't think we have any resolutions coming out of in-camera, so the only reason we'll come back to regular is to adjourn. So rather...
Correspondence, so we did bring forward a list of everybody who sent in correspondence about the mask use, so if we wanted to do that here, or if we wanted to go back and discuss that first, I don't know where you're...
Yeah, I think we haven't addressed it in camera yet, so we'll discuss it there, and then so that we could be bringing back something to regular. Yeah. So to the public, there could be motions that do come back to regular. It doesn't mean there will be, but we are going to move to in camera at 8:58 p.m. Thank you. Diane and Don, we're still there. We're just waiting to come back on live and regular.
Okay.
Evening and welcome back to our regular meeting, and we are moving to, there are no items from in camera under 17, so we move to 18.0 or 18.1, which is adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Trustee Berry motions to adjourn. Thank you very much. Have a good evening, everybody, and take care.
Are you still there?
We're still recording, Don.
Okay, according to my time, 9.
Hold on. Okay, now we're not recording.
Well, according to my 7, so how could we join at 9:37 when we have to pass a motion to